No journalist has been able to coax a comment from Denny Hastert or his lawyer since the former speaker was indicted over money transfers related to a cover-up, alleged hush money over what sources describe as sexual abuse during Hastert's days as a high school teacher and wrestling coach. That story got far less abstract on Friday when Good Morning America aired this bombshell interview.
I said, why didn't you ever tell anybody, Stevie? I mean, he was your teacher. Why didn't you ever tell anybody? And he just looked at me and said, who is ever going to believe me? In this town, who is ever going to believe me?
Joining us now to examine the story and the latest coverage of Hillary Clinton, Mary Catherine Ham, editor-at-large at Hot Air, a Fox News contributor, and co-author of the new book, End of Discussion, How the Left's Outrage Industry Shuts Down Debate, Manipulates Voters, and Makes America Less Free and Fun. Ann Gearan, political reporter for The Washington Post, and Jackie Kucinich, senior politics editor for The Daily Beast. Mary Catherine, how important is this ABC interview with this woman, Jolene, who says her brother, Steve Reinbold, told her that he was sexually harassed years ago by Denny Hastert? How much does it change the story?
Well, I think it's important. A ton of people are going to watch it for obvious reasons. Something $3.5 million worth of bad happened here that was worth covering up. So obviously the press will ask questions, and I think should ask questions as a public figure. It is a really tricky story, though, when you get to the fact that the alleged victim is no longer with us and cannot speak to this, and the guy who's being paid money, who's in the indictment, which is not for any sort of sexual abuse, is for the structuring involved in the paying, we don't know who that is yet. So it is a tricky story because an allegation alone like this, of course, ruins lives, and there has not been a trial or a charge. So it's hard to know.
There hasn't been a trial or a charge or a denial from Denny Hastert. Right. CBS News now, quoting FBI sources, are saying there are 3 alleged victims, but again, it's alleged. Jackie, before this woman came forward showing pictures of her brother, the story seemed to me to be almost remote and abstract because there was no victim that we could see. Now we have an alleged victim.
The thing that isn't clear to me from this interview is that what's changed? This woman came forward in 2006 with this same story, and they did not run the story. They did not go with her claims, and because they couldn't substantiate it. What substantiated this at this point? And I thought that was missing. You didn't, as someone who watched the interview and read the story about it, it just wasn't clear to me what changed, what new information they have about her claim.
Well, ABC says the original approach in 2006, it was off the record for one thing. And the other difference, I suppose, is that this woman, Jolene, has since been interviewed by the FBI. But that's an interesting question, Ann. Given that she didn't provide ABC News and Brian Ross with any voicemails or documents or letters, did this meet the test for publication?
Well, I mean, I agree with Jackie. It was hard to tell what had changed between the first time the woman came to ABC and the time that the interview was aired, particularly since they weren't, ABC didn't show us a trail of what they were able to get in corroborating information from the FBI. All that said, clearly the entire landscape surrounding the story has changed, and multiple news organizations, including mine, have reported on the basis of law enforcement sources, kind of the architecture of the allegations and the investigation. What's been missing and what remains missing is either a step-by-step account from one of the alleged victims, presuming there's more than one, or, as you pointed out in your introduction, a denial or any theory of the case at all from Denny Hastert. I still can't really get my head around why a lawyer hasn't spoken up yet.
I don't understand it, but as you pointed out, it's a strange indictment in that the thing that's at the heart of it, the alleged sexual abuse years ago in an Illinois high school, isn't spelled out in the indictment. And so last Sunday when Brit Hume, for example, criticized the indictment, or at least raised the question that why isn't this also extortion by the person who is going to receive the $3.5 million, I guess got almost $2 million, he got criticized for being, insensitive to the cause of sexual abuse.
Well, and I think that may be something that reporters are responding to right now as well, because the environment is such that people want to be very sensitive to alleged victims and perhaps are thinking, hey, maybe somebody didn't have the ability to come to a person of power and make these accusations at the time, and they want to sort of offer a make-up call for that. But I do think there's been interesting and I think mature reporting on the indictment itself, which is based on these old structuring laws. And I think the press has been really good about laying out why that's an interesting way to take somebody to task.
Well, usually it's used against drug dealers who are moving money around. By the way, the liberal columnists like Bill Press and Ruth Marcus of the Washington Post have also questioned whether this is prosecutorial overreach. But when on Friday, the story broke Friday morning, CNN, MSNBC covered it every hour. MSNBC sometimes as much as 3 times an hour. Fox News covered it only once, a brief story on Special Report. Whose news judgment was right?
You know, I think that's up to the viewers to say whose judgment is right. But I will say this is
Well, if you ran a cable network, would you air this throughout the day?
You know, here's the thing. I covered Dennis Hastert as a reporter on the Hill, so I think this is a very big story, and it speaks to, particularly because of how it reacted during the Foley scandal. If these allegations are true, I think it's a very important story and an trust in government, frankly. But again, I don't know if everyday Americans care as much as I do.
Right. Well, because Hastert has been very much out of the limelight for 9 years now, but during the years when he was the Speaker of the House, I mean, he was a real power player in this city. So I guess it depends on how important it is when you go after a former official. And that's the other thing that has changed, right, is that it's harder to make that charge against a sitting Speaker of the House. Yes. A former official who's already under indictment, a little bit easier.
I would also say I think your chances at getting good coverage that's not entirely sensationalized is better when somebody is out of the limelight. That doesn't mean it's better for alleged victims if the charge ends up being true. But
although I got an NBC News alert on my phone saying we have the first video of Hastert on his property in Plano, Illinois since the scandal broke. So apparently somebody's trying to stake him out.
TMZing it.
Yeah, TMZing it, very well put.